Welcome back, friends. You're just in time for the Johnny Brew Show.
What's going on, everybody? My name is John Brookhagen, host of the Johnny Brew Show, and welcome to another exciting episode where we continue to focus on education, because that's where I like to spend most of the time related to public affairs, as you guys know. And I just wanted to remind some of you that, first of all, nowhere does education or medicine fall under the Constitution whatsoever. And the 10th Amendment reads, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." So, that pretty explicitly says that the people are in charge of their education, their medicine, and if anything needs to be done in these regards, it should be done locally. Nonetheless, we continue to get more mandates, not only out of the executive office, but we get them from the governor, we get them from our county commissioners, we get them from the school board now. And a lot of people are stepping up and trying to do something, whether it's going to a school board meeting. You see us highlighting a number of people here on the Johnny Brew Show. I don't know if you heard, but YouTube is considering, I have my one and only strike because of showing footage from a county commissioners meeting. They're saying that people speaking at school board meetings are not only going to be taken off of YouTube now, but they're also going to be possibly labeled domestic terrorists. And again, I haven't heard of any murders, malfeasance, serious assaults on school board members across the country. Nothing has been materialized, but yet we're going to put federal police people in charge of rounding up PTA mothers speaking at board meetings. One of the people who are stepping up in order to combat what we all see is happening right before our eyes is Nicolas Fedei. He's a 38-year-old in IT management, and he had some experience in recalling people. I don't even know the story. Maybe we could find out. But he recalled his HOA because they weren't doing the right thing. Maybe we'll find out they were being quite tyrannical. And his recall efforts have worked. He wants to apply those recall efforts to our standing school board. The Johnny Brew Show welcomes Nicolas Fedei.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate being here.
How you doing?
I'm well. Yourself?
Very, very good. So the name of your new organization is Make CCSD Great Again.
Yes, sir.
I can't help but notice the obvious
correlation
to the Trump campaign. So I'm guessing this is you're a Trump supporter?
More conservative, yep.
Or a conservative supporter?
I tell everybody, I like Trump's policies. I just wish he would shut his mouth.
Right.
And then he would have been a great president for us. And,
I
hopefully
agree.
Again.
Policy-wise, I think he was possibly the greatest president ever.
Yep.
Of course, we did have some other things to deal with.
Look at what we're dealing with now.
Policy-wise?
Or lack of. Or...
So tell me, first of all, when did you start Make CCSD Great Again, and what's the mission statement?
Sure. So the goal or the mission of Make CCSD Great Again is to take back our school district. We want to restore or take it back from the tyrannical leaders, the current board and Dr. Yara, right? They're making some terrible decisions for the district, and I became involved with it over the mandate. That was when I started getting involved.
You mean just about a month ago?
Correct. Yeah. So I'm kind of new to it. I'm getting my grassroots here, but my son started in CCSD. He graduated in CCSD a couple years ago, and we pulled our kids out of CCSD a couple years, probably 3 years ago now. They were in a charter school for a while, and then because of the mask mandates, we pulled them out, and we're homeschooling them.
And now you're homeschooling. How's that going?
Actually, quite good. Something I never realized is how many resources are out there, and that's kind of where we're taking the initiative even further. It's not just about CCSD; it's about giving parents the options to take care of their own children and not rely on the government.
Well, I went to middle school in the 80s. You know, and maybe once a month we'd get the VCR rolled in. And I remember thinking in the 90s when I got introduced to the History Channel, I was like, wow, imagine we had this when we were in school. And then in the 2000s, we ended up getting the internet. And holy cow, there go the encyclopedias and everything. And now in the 2010s, I mean, everything is digitized and everything. You can have HBO doing documentaries on John Adams. You got the coolest, you know, Vietnam, World War II, adding color to it. And I mean, you don't need to go to school to learn about history anymore. Nope. I mean, obviously, there's places like Infinity, the Math Institute. You don't have to go to school to learn. Like, there's ways to educate yourself. I mean, you could get an MIT degree without the piece of paper.
Absolutely.
All of their courses are available online. You could take the MIT courses.
Yep, absolutely. And matter of fact, I'm in online school now.
And what are you studying?
IT management.
Sounds exciting.
No, it's not, trust me, but it works.
So, your goal?
So the goal is, our first goal is to recall the 5 board members who voted in favor of the mandate, and only because they voted in favor of the mandate. I'm not, you know, those 5 board members are Linda Cavazos, Irene Cepeda, Lola Brooks, Lisa Guzman, and Evelyn Morales, right? Danielle Ford and Katie Williams, they're untouched just because of that, because they didn't vote. I'm not saying they're great. I'm not all that impressed with Katie Williams, who's my district representative.
Well, not only is she your district representative, but she's your same mindset in the campaign.
Yes.
I mean, she was on the Trump train.
Correct, very
like
conservative.
Any kind of Trump relationships, like you have Make CCSD Great Again. She, you know, something like, you know, a Turning Point. She's a member of Turning Point. You would think she'd be the staunchest conservative of them all.
And unfortunately, I'm not seeing that from her, at least since my involvement, right? I haven't been all.
Well, she ran on the platform of
being conservative
and taking out Jara.
Yep.
And then she ended up being the deciding vote to keep them in.
I don't understand that.
And then as far as the vaccine mandate, that could be the most important conservative topic to come up at a school board meeting. I mean,
she wasn't even present.
You know, in decades, and she wasn't even present, nor did she, like, you know, maybe if she couldn't make it that night, release a statement saying, I am
against this.
Yeah, emphatically against vaccine mandates. I'm sorry I wasn't at the board. I know I wasn't going to be the deciding vote, but I want to state for the record that this is absolutely, you know, ridiculous, which is what it, and still, you know, I think the first things that she posted was about a week ago. She just said something, I'm back, I had a rough month and I was recharging or something.
And that's it.
That's all I've heard from her.
But, and that's why she's not the focus of our initiative right now.
Right.
I mean, we want to go after the 5 that are truly there. So, I mean, we are leading a recall effort against those 5. And we did put together, we even told the school district at the meeting that what we were planning to do. And we have a clip of that if you'd like to see it.
Well, first, I think your organization has a video with your goal.
Yep.
Video 1A, you want to play that?
Group called Make CCSD Great Again. We are leading an effort to recall you. I think you've lost heart, lost soul into what it is that we need from you.
We're leading an effort to recall you. We are leading an effort to recall you.
You've let down our students. You have let down our parents. You have let down our schools in general. You've let down our educators. These educators deserve so much better. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Fedei.
Oh, look, that was you speaking at the school board meeting.
I was there.
You're a rock star. Nice job. Now, and let me ask you a question. Only because there have been some allegations. Did Joey Gilbert pay you to go to the school board meeting?
You know what? If he did, I hadn't received the check yet. I mean,
would you be open to that?
Sure. Hey, I'll support him. No, I mean, no. You know what? There's no one ever reached out to me to try to go.
What was your motivation to do it? I mean, you just said, you know, the mandates was your straw that broke the camel's back. You said you had a son that had graduated.
Yep.
But, you know, why don't you ride off into the sunset? Let this be somebody else's problem.
So, for a few different reasons. One, really close friends of mine are educators at CCSD, and they're impacted by this. And then the conversation about they have to get a vaccine in order to keep their jobs. And I don't want to see my friends and my family lose their jobs because, you know, they don't want to get a vaccine.
Right.
You know, and my personal perspective of the vaccine, I don't really care either which way. You just can't tell me that I have to take it.
Right, and why the school board as opposed to the military or to Joe Biden or to Sisolak or healthcare workers or nurses? I mean, it's very all of those fights need to be had.
Well, and then you have discussion about what is the efficacy of the vaccine and some of the things that are related to it. Why are we not looking at some of the other herd immunities or the natural immunities? They're proven to be more effective, but we don't care. Or they don't care.
Well, I mean, if anybody who watches the Johnny Brew Show knows, I mean, obviously natural immunity has been proven to be
more
at
effective.
Least as robust, if not more.
Yep.
And healthcare workers, I mean, if you're a nurse, you can't argue I'm an idiot doing a podcast. You could argue with, what do you know about efficacy rates?
Yep.
But you would think that nurses who are working in the emergency rooms, who have been dealing with COVID for 18 months, you can't tell them that they don't know what the heck's going on because they've literally been knee deep in it for the past 18 months.
Why aren't they rushing out and jab me? Get me the jab. I need it now.
Well, I think you also brought us a graphic because I wanted to ask you what is involved in doing a recall. Do you have that? Can you put that up while we talk about it?
Absolutely.
What exactly, it sounds great.
it's an undertaking.
I've heard people say, let's sign a petition to recall Sisolak, or or they just did the recall Newsom, which was successful. Obviously, the vote didn't come the way that many conservatives in California were hoping. But what exactly is involved in a recall?
So we need about 10,000 signatures for each candidate, so about 50,000.
And that's because you did the math, and you need 10% of the people who voted?
Yes. And in 2019, they passed an update to the regulation. It's way more difficult to recall. So not only do you have to live in the district that you're trying to recall, but you had to have voted in that election where they were elected. So that makes it even more difficult. So we're going beyond that.
Like they did in California. They needed 1.5 million. They got 2.2 million.
Well, and that's our goal. We're going to go way far past that. But first, we're kind of taking it a little slow. We've started out on the graphic, if she had it up there.
It's up.
The recall effort is, we want to drive people to the site. We want them to sign up. And it basically filters out those that are eligible to sign up versus those that aren't. And then also we take volunteers so that when we start canvassing these areas, we can go hit the ground running. We haven't gotten too far because once you start the recall, you have 90 days to complete it. And so we have a couple different avenues that we're looking about, and I know we're going to talk about them here shortly, but we might have found some ways to get them off without even having to recall them, and that's going to save us a lot of time and effort. So, and we'll come back to that one.
Are you talking about possible criminal investigations or anything like that?
At least election integrity violations, right? And they likely might resign, or there's gross misdemeanor charges. So there's a couple of them that are in some hot water, and we can go over that.
Well, how about that for a tease right there? All right. So, I mean, you're talking about the 5 people who vote, and so you're not recalling them because they voted yes to giving JARA the ability to impose a vaccine mandate to teachers. That's just what got them in your targets.
Purview, correct. Yep. Some of the other things that make this very challenging or personal for me is when you're sitting on the board of trustees for the school district, it's a non-bipartisan position, a bipartisan position, right? But yet a majority of these board members, they take Democrat or liberal agenda items, and that's what they're running with.
Well, I know Lola Brooks, she's being celebrated on the Democratic Socialist websites for being in office, and and I just think that this used to be a fringe group.
Yeah.
I mean, you go from the 50s to McCarthyism, and then you go on and on and on. Every year, communism has crept into the normal speak of the country, and now 80 years later we've evolved to them having public websites, them taking over the Democratic Party here in Clark County, and celebrating our school board member nationwide. She's a hero because she's a Democrat socialist who got into a government position.
Absolutely.
And
Linda Cavazos is out there. She's reposting all of these liberal agenda items, all these woke agenda, supporting CRT and all of those things. Come on, that has no place in schools. And
then, I mean, one of my questions is, and I asked her to come on the show. She originally said yes, but she hasn't since. Is Katie Williams is now friends with Lola Brooks? The two of them are like a tag team. We get stuff done, and that just blows my mind, like what somebody like Charlie Kirk from Turning Point would think if he saw that they have little pet names for each other, and I think they would call themselves the dynamic duo.
Right.
And and she's a Democratic socialist, and Katie Williams' profile picture for the 3 months leading up to Election Day was a socialism sucks shirt.
Yep.
I don't know how that works.
How does that tie? Well, and if that's their way of working, in a bipartisan fashion, great. I support it.
Right.
But if you're putting our educational needs first before any of these other agendas, nobody would have any problems with it. But it's very clear that they're pushing the agenda first and education second.
And what is that agenda?
Well, I mean, they want to push all of the liberal woke CRT, their all the communist agenda items. They want bigger government. They want more reach, more overreach. They want more control over our students, over our lives, over our educators. I mean, we can't have any of that. That's not what this education system should be geared for.
I mean, I haven't heard at any of these board meetings. I've been watching all of them. They haven't been talking about academic successes or the ability to improve academics.
I have neither.
Even anything that they've even talked about was just related to making grading easier.
Yep.
And I've done the math. I mean, for example,
Wait, have you?
Is
it right?
Believe it or not, I did the math. But, I mean, just figure this. Now they have this new 90-10 grading system, right?
Yep.
So it's 90% summative, 10% formative. And I got plenty of problems with that right off the bat, but we'll save that for another day. Now, you also have a minimum F policy of 50%.
50.
Okay.
And we're going to cover that too.
Right. So if you get a 50% on all of your tests, and you multiply that by 90%, you get 45%.
Right.
And then if you have 10% for homework, then you're allowed to turn in that homework up to the last day of the grading period.
Right.
Now, if you turned in a whole quarter's worth of homework, there's no way a teacher could look through all of your homework the night before the thing is due. But essentially, if you turn in anything, you're going to get full credit for homework. So you start out with a 55%.
Right.
And all you have to do is literally pass one test in order to pass a class.
So how does that help our students?
That's my question.
I mean, it seems to help the district more than our students, right?
But yet graduation rates still are low.
Well,
Like they'll let anybody. I had a kid who was a senior, and he failed my geometry class. He had to take it for the third time. And I'm a nice guy. I mean, I gave him every opportunity to do something and pass the class because I want to see the kid graduate. And
Right.
And he did nothing. And he forced me to fail him.
Right.
And I know he graduated. And I don't know how that worked.
That makes no sense.
Right, I put in the F. He needed it to graduate.
Right. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Well, and part of the other things that we want to focus in our initiative is, we want to draw attention to prioritizing education over federal funding, right? We want to make sure whatever funding we are getting, that goes right back to the student and their education.
Because too many things tied to federal funding is tied to you mandating a vaccine or you having some sort of free or reduced lunch percentage.
Yep.
And so why can't we just get the money and try our best to help the kids?
And then you're forcing to initiate all these other programs, like, for example, forcing people to do like the free and reduced lunch. When my children were at CCSD, it was my students would not get a grade unless I completed that form. Why? I don't qualify.
Right.
It says right here on page 1, I don't qualify. Why do I have to submit it to you?
Right.
But they need that in order to get the funding. And so that they're doing everything they can to get more money from the federal government and less for our students.
And then, no matter what, I don't care if it's coronavirus or you're talking about regular, education money from the feds, you're never allowed to use any of it to give a teacher a
More money.
raise or a bonus.
Yeah, why?
I don't understand.
I don't either.
I mean, you have a school, say you have a charter school even, and they have 100 teachers there, and they get a $100,000 grant, and they say, hey, I'm going to give each of my teachers $1,000 for Christmas.
Right.
That would improve morale. That would make teachers enjoy going to their job more. They would feel appreciated. Half the teachers would probably use half the money in their own classroom just because that's the kind of people that usually are teachers.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not allowed to do it. Whether you're talking about a CCSD charter school, CCSD, anything tied to money can never, ever, 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 ever go to teachers.
Right. And that makes no sense. Because you're talking about all these teacher shortages, you're talking about substitute shortages, right? But then you want to talk about, we don't want to increase their pay, or we can't increase their pay, right? Where did the medical marijuana money go? Where did the marijuana tax money go? Right?
And a lot of people who were on the fence about marijuana said, hey, you're going to give it to education?
Perfect.
All right.
I'm good with
I'll
it.
do it. And that's what got them the vote.
And then they want to go and say, well, we haven't modified the calculations to determine how much of tax revenue from the state goes to education, and so we need to look at that, but no one's doing that. Why? Right? It doesn't make any sense. It's almost like they don't care. But then these teachers get involved with student debt for $80, $90, $100,000 to get a job that pays them what, 40?
That's
45, 50?
It's bananas.
Yeah, I can't. It doesn't make any sense to me. So some of the things that we want to do is get board of trustee members who want to get competitive wages. Let's fight for competitive wages. Whatever we have to do, if we have to get it in legislation, get it in legislation. If we have to change it, let's change it. Do what needs to be done to get them more money, right? The state has plenty. We can share, right? I'm sure we do.
Right.
We want to hire and retain the top talent. By raising those rates, or by making it more, offering different incentives, you're going to get more people. At the last board meeting, they were talking about the pool of teachers is drying up. Well, no kidding. You sit in college and you're racking all this debt up, and then you're looking at it like, you're going to pay me what, 40 grand? You know what? I'm going to change my major and I'm going to be a physicist or
anything else.
I'll be an
for
accountant.
The amount of schooling you need to become a teacher and the continuing education,
right?
To keep your license in order to qualify for raises and all this other stuff. I mean, when I was working for CCSD, I literally spent, it must have been about 2 months of work, like I'm not exaggerating. It must have been over 1,000 hours of working to put together this binder to show them that I deserved a raise.
Right. And why? Why?
And the class, that's not even counting the classes. I mean, I'm saying I spent 1,000 hours putting the binder together, getting all my ducks in a row and all my forms filled out. That doesn't count the thousands of hours that I needed while I was watching videos of them teaching me how to be more inclusive and how to differentiate my instruction and the same thing over the same thing over and over.
I kind of have a problem with the way that CCSD is working many of these things. I went to a Catholic school for many of my younger years, right?
Did they smack you?
That's what I'm. Yes,
they did.
Then when I went to public school, the teachers there beat you. I mean, the principal would send you. They send you to the principal's office who had a paddle.
Right.
And let me tell you, you didn't step out of line, and you didn't have homework. You got a 0. You did. Why are we coddling these people? Why are we coddling students now? Why are we babying them?
Well, I bet you our parents were whining about them saying that you can't paddle kids anymore.
I'm sure.
I was whining about them with the every kid gets a trophy BS.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Well, no. And they're like, oh, what's the harm? This is the harm.
Right,
I mean,
here.
We got a
entitlement. Entitlement. It's just all entitlement.
And they always say, strong men create good times create weak men create tough times.
Right.
Tough times create great men. And it sounds like we're in a bad part of the cycle right now because, I mean, the weakness.
Well, hopefully we don't have to repeat history. Maybe we can curb that now.
Nip it in the bud?
I'm saying if we could get back, right?
All right, so you mentioned something about maybe an easier way to get rid of a couple of our socialist friends.
Yes. So first off, let's talk about Irene Cepeda. One of the things that we've done, as you brought up, I was basically forced our board members off the board. It was because we were looking for things that they did wrong.
Right.
So we did the same again.
Do a little digging.
Yeah. So we started digging. Irene Cepeda is quite interesting. And these are significant violations. They violated NRS 293-1755. You can't run in a district where you don't live. Wouldn't you know? The campaign documentation shows that she did not live in the district that she ran. So she was not in District D.
Well, I'm considering one day possibly running for school board, but where I live, the election is until 2024.
Right.
So I can't run.
Unless
Are you telling me they ran even though their district?
They ran and won. So we've already...
And then they moved there.
And then they purchased a home later.
So maybe I could run in whatever district I think I have the best chance of winning.
Sure.
And then if I win...
Then move. but that's not what the Nevada Secretary of State says.
So you'll be able to tell me, though, in a couple of months. Either they get in trouble, and I realize, good, I wasn't thinking of doing that.
Right.
Or they don't get in trouble, then I should do that.
Right, absolutely. And, we filed with Secretary of State already. We had a conversation with them, and it is a violation. So we'll see how that goes apart.
And you have the proof.
Yeah, we have the proof.
Indisputable.
Indisputable.
They filled out the form like, I'm going to run
Yep.
in District X.
Yep.
And then on the address, they wrote, I live in District Y.
Yep.
And then they ran and they won.
They ran and won.
And it's on the piece of paper.
It's on the piece of paper. It doesn't get any more cut and dry than that. So the next steps in this violation, because we've submitted the documentation, the election integrity violation report was filed with the Nevada Secretary of State. The next step, they're going to assign it to an investigator. They will be notified that an investigation is ongoing.
Has that happened yet?
That's in process right now.
So you submitted it.
Yep.
And you're saying Monday or Tuesday, Irene Cepeda is going to be notified that there's an investigation.
They didn't tell us about how long. They said within 30 days we should get some more information.
Maybe
back.
she's going to find out right here on the Johnny Brew Show.
She might know right now.
Hi, Irene. If this is your first time watching, welcome to the Johnny Brew Show. We're not here to take sides. We're just here to speak common sense to Southern Nevada. And we are hoping to turn Nevada red because I'm a staunch believer in conservatism. That would be small government domestically, America first internationally, and a love for our Constitution and our founding documents.
Absolutely.
Now back to your regularly scheduled program.
Now, wouldn't you believe Morales did the same exact thing? Evelyn Morales did the same exact thing.
Evelyn Morales, if this is your first time watching, welcome to the Johnny Brew Show. We have a focus on education. You've been on some prior episodes. Just hit the subscribe button and do me a favor, hit the little bell because sometimes I go live and we would love to have you on. Danielle Ford was on last month. We've had people from Anna Binder to Lydia Dominguez to lots of people involved in education here, and we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching. Tell us more about Evelyn Morales.
So, same thing. She did not live in District C, but she did purchase a home, interesting enough, in 2021. So this year in February. So if both of them are found guilty of this.
So not only that, but somehow getting elected to the school board means they come into money and could buy a house, because I can't afford a house right now.
Oh.
So that's a good plan. So I could run for the school board in whatever district I want.
Yep.
Then I am all of a sudden going to have enough money to buy a house in the district that I won.
Yeah. Doesn't that make sense?
That sounds like a nice little prize.
Well, and isn't it interesting? They have this Nevada revised statute for a reason, right? It makes sense that you want somebody from the district to represent that district because you would know, you're more familiar with the district. You might even have children in the schools.
I can't run for sheriff of St. Louis.
Well, why not? Well, according to them, you can. Whether it works or not, I don't know.
Right, but the people of St. Louis want somebody from St. Louis to run their police department.
Think so, right? Well, so now if they're found in violation, which likely they will, I mean, all the documentation says they are, they could be charged with a gross misdemeanor. So,
what does that mean?
Well, I mean, it's a.
I mean, do they get fined? Do they get kicked out of their office?
Could be jail time, could be fines, could be kicked out. I mean, it really just depends on what the district attorney does with it after they assign it. So,
do you know who our district attorney is?
Yes, but I can't think of it right now. What's his
I'm
name?
thinking Stephen Horsford, but he's a congressman.
It is Wolfson. Wolfson.
Ah.
Yes. See?
I
was thinking Lombardo, but I know that's...
Right, he's the sheriff. And he's actually a Republican.
He is?
But otherwise, it's all
Democrat. For governor,
and our Secretary of State is a Republican. But otherwise, everybody else is a Democrat. Especially the district attorney.
Yep. So likely...
and the district attorney, just so you understand, this guy brought... 5 years after the fact, in 2021, he brought charges against a Trump voter who had voted twice in 2016.
Really?
So he's on the voter integrity train, but he's just finishing up with 2016.
Oh, so
If he stays in office, maybe he'll prosecute like the Indians who were giving out the gift cards for people who vote Democrat.
right?
That would be 2026.
Oh, a little late.
And
huh?
then, right, but then you'll get on the list. You'll be 2027.
Right. Okay, that's true. So maybe.
But then, yeah.
Well, but here's the thing: is when you start digging, and this is something that we learned when we were doing going against our HOA, right? Once you start digging, you find more and more and more. And once people start knowing, oh, hey, I know
Right.
this, I know that, like, let me share this with you.
Right.
And we're getting information all the time.
Well, and like you said, like you're talking about people running in districts that they don't even live in. And then they win it. First of all, what is that motivation?
Right.
And who's funding their campaigns?
Yeah, interesting, huh? Well, and we know a lot of that. We pulled a lot of that info. I didn't bring it for this topic, but, we definitely have all that. What we did find interesting, and we're going to cover that in the next section here a little bit more, because a few of them were funded by the NEA and NSEA, which it's a teachers union for the state
Right.
that no longer represents the educators.
Right, they're both. NEA is the national one, and SEA is the Nevada.
Nevada one, correct, right? And CCEA dropped them.
Right, is the Clark County one.
Correct. So all of the educators are now
With CCEA.
correct.
No longer with NEA or
NSEA. And funny though, they funded significant amount of money towards these board of trustees.
the unions that do not represent the CCSD teachers are making large contributions to certain school board member campaigns.
Correct.
Ballpark amounts.
Yeah, I'll show you. That's
And,
next.
and which board members would they be?
That's next. Do you want to go there?
Yeah, let's go.
So that's Irene and Morales. So hopefully those come through and we'll knock those out. The next one, Lisa Guzman, and we found some possible violations and we're digging into that a lot further. Okay, but the NEA and NSEA contributed $20,000 to her campaign. She raised $39,000.
So they gave more than half of her campaign war chest.
That's correct. And she works for them.
What?
Yeah.
What do you mean? In what capacity?
I don't know her title, but
But she works
she's
for
an
the
employee of
NSEA.
NEA or NSEA. I forget which one. NSEA. I get them confused.
Right, the state one.
Correct.
NSEA. Linda Guzman works for them.
Correct.
Still?
Yeah, and she even at the last board meeting, she says, "Look, I have to abstain from these votes."
Right,
because
I
work."
remember that.
Right, and so interesting enough,
But her employer funded her campaign,
$20,000 of it,
which is more than half of her campaign.
more than half of her campaign. And there's some more interesting, but yes. Now, you know who else they funded? Are you ready?
So, like, for example, when I wonder why all of a sudden the school board and CCEA are fighting when they used to be walking hand in hand for the past 4 years,
Yeah.
it could be because Guzman doesn't want to get along with CCEA, because the second the school board and CCEA stop being besties, that opens up 15,000 teachers to be potential NSEA members,
Correct.
which is hundreds of millions of dollars annually.
That's correct. Or they want to try to push their agenda and bypass the CCEA.
Which could be a reason why it would be good to invest tens
In
of
the
thousands
board
of
members.
dollars in a campaign.
Yeah, and not only did they invest in her, but they invested $2,000 to both Linda Cavazos and Irene Cepeda. Interesting. So in their so they technically spent $24,000 in campaign donations to those three individuals. Why?
For a school district that they're not even involved with.
Correct. Who they don't even represent the educators. Now, we had talked with the CCEA at the last meeting. We talked to the president over there, and he explained, because I asked him, I said, we're trying to figure out what the tie is between the NSEA, NEA, and CCEA, right? Because it's kind of confusing, right? And he goes, look, we used to be partnered with them because we would give them contributions and they would help us at the state level. But they weren't helping us. So we broke off from them and we did our own thing. And,
Right.
they tout how they went to the legislator and they got more money and they did
Right.
this.
And I worked for CCSD at the time.
So, right. So it's true. They did good work there. And that's great. And people are asking where'd that money go and what are they doing with it. But nonetheless, I don't know. But
Where's the THT money, right?
Well, yeah,
we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that's interesting about it is, if you broke off from them, why is NEA and NSEA so involved in the board? To me, it seems like they're trying to bypass CCEA and everybody that they represent, and that way they still have a placehold in the school district.
And, obviously, those in education know if CCEA loses less than 50% of the population of teachers, then they lose their power.
Right.
So, and then that opens up the floodgates to what's going to happen then. And obviously, you're talking about $1,000 per teacher.
Correct.
You talk about 10,000 teachers, add 3 zeros to that, you're talking about $10 million.
Sounds good to me.
And that's way.
I'd have to pull up my calculator to
I'm right here.
So, some of the other things that was interesting when we're researching Lisa Guzman, during her campaign, her husband was paid $1,200 for expenses related to staff. Her son was paid $1,000 expenses related to staff. A loan repayment to her and her husband for $7,900, but on all of her documents, it only shows that they ever took a loan for $5,100. So you're the math whiz. Why did they pay themselves more for a loan that they didn't claim to have received?
And this is the problem, is when you're talking about such big numbers. Like if me and you, we were playing poker and, 10s and 20s were flying around and I end up with an extra 10, whatever, nobody's going to be, you're talking about millions and hundreds of thousands of dollars here and there and here and there. $2,000 goes missing, nobody notices until somebody does a little bit of digging.
Right, and likely Nevada Secretary of State hasn't looked into that. Now, we haven't filed anything yet on her, only because we're trying to cross our T's and dot our I's first, right?
Well, it sounds like you're trying to undergo some serious legal stuff. This
right.
isn't kangaroo court.
No.
This isn't HOA court either.
Exactly. It's a bigger audience.
Right. With bigger ramifications
exactly.
than whether I could put my garbage out 2 nights early.
Right, or there's weeds in your front yard, right? So that's why we're looking
Sounds
at
like
it.
I touched a nerve. Weeds in the front yard was the thing, huh?
No.
That's what started you in politics. Some freaking weed.
Security was, but that's nonetheless. So it's definitely a violation to pay yourself more out of your campaign funds than you put in or that you loaned, right? And then we find it odd that they paid her husband and son, and we kind of want.
Who did the campaign paid her husband and son,
Yeah.
or the NSEA paid her husband and son?
Well, you could say the NECA because that was more.
Right. It's over half of the money.
Exactly, and so why?
So NSEA is literally giving her husband more than $600.
Right, you would say
through an intermediary called her own campaign.
Right. Why?
Husbands and wives are making money off of their spouses' campaigns.
You got a chance.
You
got a shot now.
You want to raise?
So,
all right.
One of the other things we found odd, and I don't know that it's going to go anywhere, but it's just interesting. You watched a lot of the board meetings, right?
I watched, I think, all of it, but
does a name
a couple of
Sarah
times.
Comroe sound familiar at all?
I've heard it.
Yeah. She was paid $500 for advertising by Lisa Guzman. But she's a teacher that doesn't appear to have any advertising background. So why is she paying her that?
And that's it. I guess no line item, no
receipt,
Facebook promotion or something.
No, here's your company.
Just here's some advertising.
Yeah, here's some $500 advertising. Isn't that kind of interesting? And that's probably not a violation. But it just raises a couple of eyebrows. Like, okay,
why not say it? Like, especially if it looks weird. Like if I'm going to pay my wife, right? If I'm running a school board, I'm going to pay my wife. I'm going to be like, hey, she sat here on Saturday from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Yep.
Producing a podcast. I'm going to give her $100. She's worth a lot more, but
it's campaign dollars, so we got to be nice,
fiscal,
right?
Responsible, right? But I would write that. I want to be just like, hey, Adriana, here you go.
Right. Now, one of the other women that was running for the school board, I believe it was in 2020. I don't have her name written down, but she also paid $1,000 to Sarah Comroe.
Oh, it's good to be Sarah.
Yeah, but not for advertising. Huh? Alexis Salt.
Alexis Salt is that I think Alexis Salt is Matt Anthony's sister.
No idea. Didn't look into it.
Johnny Bruce show people know. No, it is? And she's the one who really started the whole thing with Matt Anthony and the CCRP and the centrist Barbara Skovsky, and Alexis Salt was running for school board,
Yep.
and she ended up losing. And Matt was saying how she was kind of like 50-50 Democrat-Republican, and she was starting to like Trump, and then all of a sudden she decided to run for school board, so then she turned into this crazy socialist person, and Matt said it changed right before her eyes, and I'm sorry. That name sets off
some triggers, huh?
Yeah, yes, I'm triggered.
Well, and she invested $1,000 into Sarah Palmer also, and we.
Alexis Salt did.
Yeah.
So that was during the same campaign that
Correct.
Alexis Salt lost, but
Correct.
Guzman won.
Correct. And so it just very it's interesting more than anything
And
else.
who is the girl? Sarah. Who is this?
She's a teacher for CCSD. She speaks at every single one of the meetings.
Is that how I know her name? But
Yeah, and the thing is she's not. The things that she's talking about, she's very critical of the board and the way that they treat educators. She's very critical, at least the meetings that I've seen. And so I don't understand the tie there. Like,
Right.
You would be up there singing praises if you were being paid by the board.
unless you're a plant to distract.
Could be.
I mean, you know,
Or
I tell my Republican candidates, come on here, spill the dirt, let's talk about it, let's get it out right here and now, and that
Yeah.
way you don't have to worry. Maybe she's up there and, Linda Cavazos is like, ask this and this, but not this.
could be. That very well could be. Or maybe she's there to try to rally the rest of the crowd and get them all so they can throw them out.
Oh, right. Say really controversial stuff, which makes patriots' eyes bleed.
Yep. And then they want to leave. They get thrown out or they get kicked out.
You ever get kicked out?
I have not. Nope.
You behave yourself?
Look, I'm
You're a
smart
good
enough
boy,
to know.
you wear your mask?
I wear my mask. I look
Aw.
straight forward. I don't talk to anybody.
Do you clap?
Nope. Nope.
Do you do the jazz hands?
Do the jazz hands.
I don't think I could do it. I would have to do, that's so...
Well, you know what? It's easy enough to do when you want to sit there and you want to make sure you know what's going on.
Right.
But in the last meeting that I was at, they literally kicked out the rows in front of me. And, Anna Binder had spoke about it. And the way that she described things wasn't actually accurate. But
well, before we...
but that's down low.
why don't you let us know? It's a great way to finish off this episode before we go to part 2.
Gotcha. So the thing is they were sitting there. She's very critical of the My Children Advocate group, and they were sitting there. They were having a small discussion, whispering to each other back and forth, showing each other different things. And Anna Binder got up there and talked, and then after she spoke, I didn't see what the group in front of them said, but she basically flipped off everybody and left. And then when the other crowd wasn't rambunctious at all. And then sitting in front of me, they were sitting there talking back and forth. And Irene Cepeda, and that was one of the things I mentioned when I spoke, she came on and interrupted whoever was speaking and said, if we can hear you up here, you're being way too loud. And nobody knew what she was talking about because nobody was really being disruptive. But the women in front of me didn't stop talking because they didn't hear her, number one. Number two, they weren't being disruptive. But it was enough for... Linda Cavazos to pass a note to the woman next to her, who then sends out security. Security walks in and escorts both rows out. Both complete rows. Now, they were two women talking back and forth, like they were showing each other something on their phone and whatnot. And they were whispering. I couldn't hear what they were saying, and I was sitting a row behind them.
Right.
So they weren't being disruptive, and they actually weren't even belligerent when they were escorted out. It was the woman on the end who actually had nothing to do with it. I felt bad for. But that's why I sit there and I be quiet. I don't talk to anybody.
There was collateral damage.
She was collateral damage. And she was the one that was screaming obscenities and, going
Because she was collateral damage.
Because she was collateral
She's
damage.
like you,
Yeah.
behaving herself,
Yep.
sitting on the end. I don't know them. I
Yep,
don't know them.
I'm not associated. I'm not
and
doing
she's
anything.
getting escorted out, and then all of a sudden she's like,
Yeah, exactly. And I mentioned to Cepeda.
I did this.
I mentioned to Cepeda during that meeting that she was literally yelling at them for talking because they were talking and being rude and disrupting their process. And So that's one of the things I mentioned to her is, look, there's a way to handle yourself, and that was very unprofessional.
Right.
And all you're doing is fanning the flames.
Right.
And maybe that's what they're trying to do.
Well, that's what it seems that way sometimes.
Right? Absolutely.
All right. Well, stay right there. We got the skinny on the recall efforts as well as the possible violations by existing school board members. We're going to come back and talk about some of the things that have been in the news a lot lately. I mean, THT, this should be a school union issue, a CCEA issue. But THT is not funding. The teachers are getting turned away from doctor's appointments. Collection notices are going out to credit bureaus.
Yeah.
Something a lot of teachers, well, you have a lot of information about that. JARA with his vaccine mandate for teachers, and now is it going to be
For students.
also for students? We have some, one of my sources is telling me that it's actually a done deal. It's going to be announced sometime this week.
About which one?
About vaccine mandates for students.
Okay.
And also we're getting information about a Democrat-leaning poll saying that like 90% of parents would consider yanking their kids out about vaccine mandates.
Beautiful.
We'll get into that later. The school buses, are they showing up? Are we really going to put kids on city buses in order to get to school? I mean, that can't be safe. I mean, I don't really want to send my wife onto the bus alone.
Right.
Much less,
Nice.
my
Make
12-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Something that the Johnny Bruce Show is always talking about regarding education is the restorative justice component of our disciplinary action at CCSD. And then we're going to get into episode 3. We're going to be talking about breaking up CCSD. What are the chances that actually happen? Some of the groups that are spawning due to this tyranny, grading, learning loss, emergency substitute teachers, and is the FBI going to be sending spies to the CCSD board meetings? All that and more. Just do me a favor, make sure you subscribe, hit the little bell so that way when part 2 gets posted, you'll be the first to watch and I'll watch it with you. I'm always in the comment section. And part 3, all right, we're here with Nick Fedei of Make CCSD Great Again. Thanks so much for joining us.
Anytime.
He's going to stick around for part 2 and we'll be back on the Johnny Bruce Show.